The Washington, D.C. fire and EMS chief says officials do not expect any survivors from last night's collision between a U.S. Army helicopter and an American Airlines regional passenger jet on approach to Reagan National Airport. 64 people were on board the American jet, and the Army said 3 soldiers were on board the helicopter. Tragic story this morning. Joining us now, John Goglia, an aviation expert and former presidential appointee to the National Transportation Safety Board. Thank you for being here, John. Obviously, our hearts and condolences go out to the families of those affected here. As for the investigation itself, what happens now?
Well, starting last night, there probably were NTSB people at the tower talking to the controllers, talking to the radar operators, and in general, just gathering what facts that they could around the perimeter and making sure that they don't interfere with the recovery efforts. But also talking to the people doing the recovery to make sure they minimize the damage, any additional damage to the physical evidence, because that may become important. And at some point in time, they're going to be interviewing anybody and everybody that has seen this, anything to do with this accident. And they'll be talking to people actually that maybe have very little to do with the event, but might have some knowledge to share. So that was last night. This morning, I'm sure they hit the ground, boots running, with people out there investigating, gathering the facts, I should say, from wherever they could without continuing to interfere with any rescue. The recovery efforts are a different story. They can be in and amongst a recovery of bodies and the rest looking at physical evidence, but they would not interfere with any kind of recovery.
And now this, of course, is the first fatal U.S. airline, commercial airline collision in 16 years, which is an impressive track record. But a lot has been made and reported on these near-miss situations, these near-miss collisions, which have been on the rise in recent years. Some of that attributed to just the overall congestion level in our skies. What do you think needs to be done to make those near-miss situations more of a rarity, if at all zero, and prevent situations like this in the future?
Well, you know, one of the problems that comes with having such a stellar success rate with safety, that 16 years that you just mentioned, is that human beings tend to be complacent. They start to really feel like nothing's going to go wrong, and things happen. And near misses are just warning shots. They're telling you the system is strained, something's going on, and you should be dealing with it aggressively. And we haven't really dealt with it as aggressively as we should, obviously. So all the air traffic control problems that we have are based upon our system, which is really, really saturated with flights. So at some point in the future, somebody's going to have to take the bull by the horns and start talking about how do we reduce the operations but keep the passenger flow up.
Well, so John, but how do you do that? I mean, I think this goes to the large question about just the increase in traffic at all these major metropolitan airports, the density of traffic in the air over these airports, the speed at which we're trying to land and have planes take off, the lobbying efforts by airlines to capture more slots, given the commercial interests and demand.
Well, maybe we start allowing bigger airplanes to come into Washington National, right? So one wide-bodied airplane can take the place of 2 narrow-bodied airplanes. We now see that Airbus has a 200-passenger A321. So maybe that's what we need to start pushing the airlines to get these larger single-aisle airplanes international, and therefore reducing the number of slots needed for multiple smaller airplanes. Washington National is a unique airport. It's in close. Everybody, including me, wants to fly in and out of National. And it puts a lot of pressure. The airlines want the passengers, and the passenger wants the convenience. Puts a lot of pressure on the government, both the airport oversight and the federal government, to continue that flow international. So it's it's a really difficult situation. You know, we years ago we changed some of that with Dallas Love Field when we just stopped flights, long range flights out of Dallas Love Field, forced everything to DFW. I don't know that that's the answer here, because originally that was going to be Dulles, and Dulles is pretty saturated now today itself. So the demand is just so high, it's going to be really difficult to find a solution.